The stars above Althera Prime shimmered like frozen fire, scattered across the abyss of space. For centuries, this world had belonged to the Dominion, a ruthless empire that saw itself as the rightful rulers of the Orion Arm. They had conquered, enslaved, and broken species who dared to resist, leaving behind a trail of silenced civilizations. And humanity? Humanity was supposed to be just another footnote in their long history of domination. When Earth's colonies first made contact with the Dominion, the rulers of the vast alien empire had laughed at the audacity of these fragile creatures from Sol. They had allowed humanity to settle on a handful of fringe worlds, seeing no reason to consider them a threat. And when the Dominion demanded tribute, humanity had paid. When they took prisoners, humanity protested, but did nothing. When they slaughtered settlements on the frontier, humanity mourned. But they did not fight back. Not at first. Then came the massacre of Tiberius IV, a prosperous colony, home to 5 million humans, reduced to ashes in a single Dominion assault. Entire families burned alive in the streets, children torn from their homes and thrown into slave ships, entire cityscapes turned to nothing but charred ruins. The Dominion had expected fear. They had expected submission. Instead, they awakened something they never should have. Humanity had stayed silent for years. They had swallowed every insult, every act of cruelty, every moment of humiliation. But silence was not submission. It was patience. It was the quiet before the storm. And when the storm came, it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Dominion's arrogance shattered the moment the warship of vengeance arrived in their space. It did not come with emissaries. It did not come with pleas or demands. It came like a specter of doom, its black hull reflecting no light, its weapons primed for destruction. A ship built in the shadows, forged from stolen Dominion schematics, enhanced with human ingenuity. It was not the largest warship ever seen, nor the most technologically advanced. But what made it different was who commanded it. Admiral Jonathan Kane, a man whose family had been among those slaughtered on Tiberius IV, a man who had sworn an oath not to peace, not to diplomacy, but to vengeance. From the moment his ship entered Dominion space, it made no secret of its intent. It tore through the first patrol it encountered like a blade through flesh. Dominion officers, long accustomed to watching lesser species grovel at their feet, found themselves screaming in terror as their ships were ripped apart by weapons of horrifying precision. And then, the message was broadcast across every Dominion channel. A simple sentence, spoken in a language they had never heard before but understood perfectly. You should have left us alone. The war had begun, and humanity would not be silent any longer. The Dominion scrambled to respond. Their fleets, which had ruled unchallenged for centuries, had never faced an enemy quite like this. Most rebellions were easily crushed. Most species, once beaten, remained broken. But humans were different. At first, the Dominion's high command dismissed the warship of vengeance as nothing more than a rogue element, an act of defiance that would be swiftly dealt with. But they underestimated the depth of humanity's rage. They thought Admiral Jonathan Kane was alone. They were wrong. When the Dominion sent a fleet to intercept the warship, they expected a one-sided battle. The Imperial Strike Force was composed of 20 warships, each battle-tested and equipped with the most advanced weaponry in their arsenal. Against them, one human warship. The Dominion commander, Admiral Rael Zorth, broadcast his terms to Kane before the battle began. Surrender now, human. We may yet find mercy for your species. The reply came in a voice that was cold, calm, and deadly. Mercy? Number, there will be none of that today. And then the trap was sprung. From the shadow of a nearby asteroid field, 5 more human warships emerged. Their hulls were black as the void itself, the product of stolen Dominion stealth technology. They had been waiting, watching, silent as death. The battle erupted in an instant. Human ships did not fight like the Dominion. They did not move in predictable formations or rely on brute force. They fought dirty. They used deception, ambushes, and ruthless tactics that the Dominion considered dishonorable. To humanity, honor meant nothing. Victory meant everything. The warship of vengeance led the charge, cutting through Dominion shields with weapons engineered specifically to exploit their weaknesses. Dominion officers screamed as their ships were torn apart by pinpoint railgun fire, their hulls breached by missiles that detonated with terrifying precision. Admiral Rael Zorth barely had time to process the carnage before Kane's warship jumped directly behind him, a maneuver no Dominion captain would have dared attempt. Kane's voice crackled through the comms. "You never should have touched Tiberius 4. Then the Dominion flagship exploded. The battle was over in less than 20 minutes. 20 ships reduced to burning wreckage. And from that moment forward, the Dominion knew. Humanity was at war, and they were not going to stop. The news of the ambush sent shockwaves through the Dominion. For the first time in centuries, a Dominion fleet had been utterly annihilated, not by another great empire, not by some rogue faction, but by humans, a species they had mocked, a species they had dismissed as weak. Now, the Dominion's high command convened in a meeting of crisis. Inside the grand war chambers of their capital world, holograms of their highest-ranking officials flickered to life. Admirals, governors, intelligence officers, all gathered under the shadow of the imperial sovereign, the supreme ruler of the Dominion. His reptilian gaze burned with fury as he addressed his subordinates. "Explain to me." His voice was slow, measured, dangerous, how a species of primitive bipeds destroyed an entire fleet. A nervous silence followed. Then, Grand Admiral Vorthak stepped forward. "They have been preparing for this war longer than we realized, Your Eminence. Their tactics, their weapons, these are not the acts of an undisciplined rebellion. This is a military force, a purpose-built force designed to counter us." The sovereign's claws curled into the armrests of his throne. "You assured me they were weak." "They were." Vorthak hesitated, until we gave them a reason not to be. The sovereign's gaze darkened. Tiberius 4. The destruction of that colony had been a warning, a demonstration of Dominion power. But instead of crushing human resistance, it had forged something far more dangerous, a war machine fueled by vengeance. The Dominion had expected compliance. Instead, they had birthed an enemy that would not stop until blood had been paid for blood. The sovereign turned to his intelligence director. "Where is this warship now?" The officer bowed slightly. "It struck another target yesterday, a Dominion outpost on the edge of the Valshar sector. No survivors." The room tensed. Then another officer spoke. "Your Eminence, with respect, this is not just a rogue admiral. We intercepted communications between human colonies. They are not only at war, they are mobilizing." Silence fell over the war chamber. Then the sovereign spoke a single sentence. "Send the fleets." Kane stood on the bridge, watching as his fleet prepared for its next strike. What had once been a single warship had now become a growing armada. More human warships had emerged from hiding, vessels that had spent years in secret development. In the shadows, humanity had prepared for this war, gathering allies, stealing technology, and building the weapons they would need to destroy the Dominion. Now, the time for hiding was over. Commander Ava Sinclair stepped up beside him. "Dominion forces are moving, sir. They've declared total war." Kane's gaze never left the stars. He had known this moment would come. The Dominion would bring their full might against humanity, and that was exactly what he wanted. He turned to his crew. "We've spent years waiting for this fight. Now it's time to end them." The stars around them burned as the warship of Vengeance made its next jump. The war had only just begun. The Dominion's fleets moved like a vast storm, warships blotting out the stars as they surged toward human-occupied space. Hundreds of capital ships, thousands of fighters, entire battle groups formed in tight formations, prepared to do what they had always done: crush defiance before it could spread. This time, however, they faced something different. Humanity had been preparing for war far longer than the Dominion had realized. They had studied the Dominion's weaknesses, reverse-engineered their technology, and built weapons designed specifically to shatter their empire. And at the center of it all was Admiral Jonathan Kane. The Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace, their warships gliding into the orbit of Carthage 7, a human colony on the fringes of Dominion-controlled space. The planet below had little strategic value. Its main purpose was agriculture and resource gathering. But to the Dominion, that didn't matter. This was about sending a message. The fleet's admiral, Darvok Thren, stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with enough firepower to wipe out the colony in minutes. He turned to his weapons officer. "Begin planetary bombardment." The order had barely left his lips when the alarms screamed across the bridge. A new fleet had just arrived. Humanity's true response had come. Kane's warships tore into the Dominion fleet without warning. They did not form battle lines, did not engage in slow, methodical fleet combat like the Dominion was used to. No, they struck like predators, using speed, deception, and brute efficiency. The warship of Vengeance led the charge, its weapons firing with terrifying precision. One Dominion cruiser was torn apart before its crew could even react. Another fell moments later, its engines ripped to pieces by a human railgun volley. For the first time in Dominion history, they were outmatched. Their shields were strong, but human weapons had been engineered to bypass them. Their formations were disciplined, but human tactics were unpredictable. And then came the worst part: the boarding parties. Alarms blared. Human soldiers had breached the ship, carving through corridors with terrifying speed. The Dominion, long used to overwhelming force and subjugation, was not prepared for this kind of brutality. These weren't just soldiers. They were Tiberius survivors. Men and women who had lost everything when the Dominion had wiped out their home. They did not fight for land, for honor, or for conquest. They fought for vengeance, and vengeance was merciless. Dominion officers screamed as human forces swept through the ship, cutting down anything in their path. The halls ran red with alien blood. The once proud Dominion warriors, who had terrorized the galaxy for generations, found themselves overwhelmed, outmatched, and hunted. The last thing Admiral Thren saw before the blade slid across his throat was the cold, merciless eyes of a human soldier who had lost his family on Tiberius 4. The battle was over, and with it, the first great victory of the war. The Dominion had lost an entire fleet. The survivors fled in terror, their once mighty warships reduced to burning wreckage. On Carthage 7, the human colonists looked to the sky, watching as the ships that had come to destroy them were instead obliterated. And aboard the warship of Vengeance, Kane stood on the bridge, staring at the battlefield. One battle was won, but the war was far from over. Commander Sinclair approached him. "High Command is ready for the next strike, sir." Kane nodded slowly. "Good. Then let's show the Dominion the true cost of their mistakes." The war had only just begun. And humanity was far from finished. The Dominion could no longer ignore the truth. Their fleets were being torn apart. Their once invincible armies were retreating. Their empire, which had ruled with an iron grip for centuries, was losing to humans, a species they had once dismissed as nothing more than another weak addition to their conquests. And now the war had reached its most critical moment. Humanity was coming for their home world. On the bridge of the warship of Vengeance, Admiral Kane stood before a holographic projection of Dominion Prime, the capital of the Empire. It was a world of towering citadels, impenetrable fortresses, and orbital defenses designed to withstand any invasion. No species had ever dared attack it. But Kane wasn't just planning to attack it. He was planning to burn it to the ground. His officers stood around him, grim-faced and silent as he outlined the strategy. "The Dominion believes they are untouchable," Kane said, his voice cold and steady. "We're going to prove them wrong." Ava Sinclair, his second-in-command, nodded. "Their homeworld defenses are strong, but they were designed to stop large-scale invasions, not a precision strike." And that was humanity's advantage. Instead of launching a massive fleet-to-fleet engagement, Kane's plan relied on speed and surgical precision. He had studied the Dominion's defenses for years. He knew their blind spots, their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. The attack would come in 3 waves. A decoy fleet would launch a full frontal assault, drawing Dominion forces away from their capital. A stealth strike team, led by Kane himself, would slip past the defenses and land directly in the heart of the capital city. Once inside, they would detonate a weapon that would cripple Dominion Prime's infrastructure, sending the Empire into chaos. This wasn't just an attack. It was the death knell of the Dominion. And it was about to begin. The first wave of human ships arrived in a blaze of fire, emerging from hyperspace like avenging wraiths. Dominion fleets scrambled to respond, launching countermeasures, firing batteries of plasma and energy cannons. The sky above their homeworld turned into a battlefield of fire and debris, just as planned. While the Dominion focused on the decoy fleet, the warship of Vengeance and its small escort of stealth ships slipped past the chaos, undetected. They navigated through orbital debris, evading automated turrets, using the very same cloaking technology the Dominion had once used against them. The moment they entered the lower atmosphere, the order came. "Deploy strike teams." They hit the ground hard. Dropships roared through the sky, crashing into the streets of the capital city. The Dominion had never imagined an enemy could bring war to their very doorstep. And now, human soldiers were storming through their streets. Armed with weapons forged for this very purpose, they cut through enemy forces like wildfire. Explosions rocked the city. Dominion soldiers, once proud conquerors, now ran for their lives. The strike team had one objective: reach the Dominion War Council's central command building and disable planetary defenses. And they had 10 minutes to do it. Kane and his team moved with brutal efficiency. Plasma fire burned the air around them. They pushed forward, fighting their way through the city streets, killing anything that stood in their way. Human fury had reached its peak, and nothing would stop them now. They stormed the War Council's headquarters, breaking through reinforced barricades, slaughtering guards who had once ruled over 1,000 enslaved worlds. At the top of the command tower, the Dominion's leaders cowered in fear. For the first time in their existence, they were afraid. Kane stepped forward, blood splattered on his armor, his pulse rifle still smoking. He looked down at the Dominion's High Chancellor, the most powerful being in their empire. "You should have left us alone." Then he pulled the trigger. The explosion that followed was heard across the entire planet. The War Council's headquarters, the heart of the Dominion's rule, was obliterated in a single instant. With their leaders dead, their military forces crumbling, and their homeworld in chaos, the Dominion's rule collapsed. Across the galaxy, enslaved worlds rose up against their former masters. Dominion fleets surrendered or were hunted down. The empire that had once ruled through terror and oppression was no more. And at the center of it all, standing amidst the burning ruins of their capital, Admiral Kane looked up at the smoke-filled sky and knew humanity had won. The war was over, but the legend of the warship of vengeance would live on forever. The Dominion was dead, its fleets shattered, its homeworld burning, its rulers buried beneath the ruins of their own arrogance. Across the galaxy, the enslaved and the oppressed rose up against their former masters, breaking their chains, taking back their worlds. What had once been an empire of terror had become a graveyard of power. But victory did not mean peace. For Admiral Jonathan Kane, the war was not over, because even in death, the Dominion had left behind a final curse. With the Dominion gone, chaos spread like wildfire. For centuries, entire systems had lived under its rule, their economies, trade, and infrastructure dependent on their empire's vast network. Now, that network was gone. Warlords, former Dominion generals, and even human factions began fighting over the scraps. The same species who had once been united in the war against the Dominion now turned on each other. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of space, the last remnants of the Dominion were gathering. They were not finished yet. Kane knew it was coming. As the warship of vengeance patrolled through the wreckage of former Dominion space, intelligence reports confirmed what he had suspected. A last Dominion fleet had survived. And they wanted revenge. The trap was set near the asteroid fields of Tarsus V, a remote, uncharted region where hyperspace distortions made navigation difficult. Kane's fleet was investigating reports of scattered Dominion forces regrouping when the attack came. A fleet of Dominion warships decloaked from the asteroid shadows. The last of the Dominion's elite forces, admirals who had escaped the destruction of their homeworld, officers who had sworn to make humanity suffer before they died. The warship of vengeance was outnumbered 6-1. But Kane didn't care. The Dominion ships swarmed forward, weapons blazing. Plasma bolts streaked through space, railgun rounds ripped through the void, and explosions lit up the asteroid field like fireworks. Kane's fleet moved with deadly precision, dodging fire, returning destruction tenfold. Even outnumbered, they fought with ruthless efficiency. The warship of vengeance led the charge, its cannons ripping through Dominion cruisers, its missiles hunting down and exterminating the last of the enemy's command ships. The Dominion admirals who had sworn vengeance did not live to see another day. One by one, their warships were turned into drifting wreckage. The final Dominion commander, bleeding and broken, broadcast a message to Kane as his ship burned around him. "You think this is victory, human?" he spat. "You think this is the end?" Kane leaned forward, his voice cold as death. "Number, this is justice." The final Dominion flagship exploded in a blinding burst of light. And just like that, the war was truly over. The galaxy would never be the same. With the Dominion's shadow lifted, new powers began to rise. Some worlds wanted peace, others wanted war. And humanity? Humanity had proven itself. They had been underestimated, dismissed, mocked. But now the galaxy knew the truth. Humans were not to be ignored. And if anyone ever threatened them again, they would burn like the Dominion did. Admiral Kane looked at the stars, knowing the war had changed everything. But one thing would never change. Humanity would never be silent again. The war was over. The Dominion, once the supreme power of the Orion Arm, was nothing but ashes and wreckage. Its fleets were gone, its rulers dead. The empire that had enslaved entire species and ruled with an iron fist for centuries had ceased to exist. But peace did not follow. Power abhors a vacuum, and with the Dominion's destruction, the cracks began to form. Cain stood aboard the warship of Vengeance, staring out at the stars. He had won the war, but he was about to lose everything else, because now humanity itself was tearing apart. At first it was small, a few disagreements between human-controlled worlds, arguments over how to handle Dominion space. Some wanted to liberate and help rebuild the broken planets, forging alliances with newly freed species. Others, those who had lost the most in the war, wanted vengeance. They wanted to conquer. The war had transformed humanity. Once a race that sought peace and exploration, they had learned how to kill, how to burn, how to make an empire fall. And now, for the first time, humans were turning those skills on each other. Cain watched as factions began forming. The Terran Republic, those who believed humanity should establish a new intergalactic government, one built on peace, trade, and cooperation with other species. The Iron Suns, a faction made up of former soldiers, warlords, and bitter survivors who wanted to turn Dominion space into a new human empire. The Isolationists, colonies that had seen enough war, demanding humanity withdraw from galactic affairs and focus only on protecting its own. And in the middle of it all, Cain, the man who had won the war, the man who had the blood of billions on his hands, the man everyone wanted on their side. Cain's fleet had been stationed at Carthage 7, a former human colony that had become a meeting ground for the new human factions. The leaders of the Republic and the Iron Suns had gathered for peace talks, hoping to negotiate the future of humanity's role in the galaxy. Cain, a hero to both sides, had been chosen to mediate. But the peace talks never had a chance. An assassination attempt changed everything. As the leaders debated in the grand chamber of Carthage 7's citadel, a hidden explosive detonated. The blast killed dozens, including key Republic diplomats. The Iron Suns representatives escaped unharmed, and just like that, civil war erupted. The Republic blamed the Iron Suns. The Iron Suns denied involvement, but their fleets immediately moved to seize control of former Dominion territory. Cain barely escaped the explosion with his life. His warship, once the sword that had brought the Dominion to its knees, was now caught between two sides of a new war. Humanity was at war with itself. Cain's officers stood before him, waiting for orders. Some wanted him to join the Republic, to fight for unity and peace. Others urged him to side with the Iron Suns to ensure humanity's dominance in the galaxy. Cain said nothing. He had fought one war. He had killed for vengeance. He had destroyed an empire. And now the people he fought for were turning on each other. Commander Ava Sinclair stepped forward. "What do we do, Admiral?" Cain looked out at the stars. He knew one thing for certain. He was done fighting for other people. The Dominion had burned because of what they did to humanity. Now, if humanity wanted to burn itself down, they would do it without him. Cain made his decision. He turned to his officers. "We're leaving." The warship of Vengeance departed from Carthage 7, disappearing into deep space. Cain left the war behind. Let the Republic and the Iron Suns fight. Let them tear each other apart over what humanity was supposed to become. He had given humanity its chance. Now he would carve his own path. With a crew of the most battle-hardened veterans from the Dominion War, Cain set a new course, not for Earth, not for Dominion space, not for the Republic or the Iron Suns, but for the unknown. There were more enemies out there, more threats, more civilizations that thought humans were weak. And when those enemies came knocking, they would learn the same lesson the Dominion had. Humanity never stayed silent. The galaxy had changed forever. The Dominion was gone, wiped from existence. Humanity had proven itself on the battlefield, But instead of uniting in victory, they had turned on each other. The Republic and the Iron Suns waged war for control, while countless other factions rose and fell in the chaos. And somewhere beyond the reach of their petty conflicts, Admiral Jonathan Kane disappeared into the void. For years, no one heard from him. No distress signals, no sightings, no transmissions. It was as if he had vanished. But the galaxy would soon learn. He was never truly gone. While humanity tore itself apart, something far worse was awakening. At the edge of known space, in the unexplored Nyx expanse, Kane and his crew discovered something terrifying. A fleet of alien warships, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their hulls were black as the void, their weapons far beyond Dominion or human technology. They moved without sound, without warning. Their attacks left no survivors. They were the Architects, a race so ancient, so powerful, that even the Dominion had feared them. They had not been seen in millennia. The galaxy believed they were myths, legends of an enemy so devastating that entire civilizations had simply vanished when they came. And now, they were returning. Kane watched from the bridge of the Warship of Vengeance as his scouts transmitted the last moments of a dying world, one of the former Dominion colonies, completely erased in minutes. Not conquered, not enslaved, erased. The Architects weren't here to rule. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to cleanse. Kane had spent his entire life fighting wars. He had destroyed an empire, crushed his enemies, and brought entire fleets to their knees. But what he saw now? This was different. This wasn't a war. This was extermination. Kane knew he had a choice. He could disappear into the void, live out the rest of his days far away from another war. Or he could warn the galaxy, even if they wouldn't believe him, even if humanity had abandoned him, even if the Republic and the Iron Suns still fought their war. Because if the Architects arrived and the galaxy was still divided, then everything, humanity, the Republic, the Iron Suns, every species that had once lived under the Dominion's rule, would burn together. Kane turned to his crew. "We go back." They exchanged uncertain glances. One of his officers spoke. "Sir, after what we did, the Republic sees us as traitors. The Iron Suns think we abandoned them. The entire galaxy thinks we're dead." Kane's eyes hardened. "Then we'll make them listen." The Warship of Vengeance turned away from the darkness of the Nyx expanse, its engines roaring to life. It had been built for war, and war was coming. Not for power, not for vengeance, but for survival. Weeks later, across every faction, across every world, a single transmission interrupted every broadcast. It was Kane. His face appeared across Dominion ruins, human colonies, Republic command centers, Iron Suns warships. His voice, once thought lost, echoed across the stars. "You thought the war was over. You thought the enemy was defeated." His eyes were sharp, his voice like steel. "You were wrong." Behind him, a hologram of the Architect fleet loomed, a nightmare of blackened warships, unlike anything seen before. "If we do not unite, if we do not fight together, then everything we have built, everything we have bled for, will be nothing." He paused, letting the silence hang. "You may hate me, you may want me dead, but you don't have a choice." He leaned forward. "Because the real war is just beginning." And then, the Warship of Vengeance disappeared from the broadcast. But the galaxy had heard the warning, and for the first time since the fall of the Dominion, the fractured factions of humanity looked to the stars and prepared for war. The Dominion is dead. Humanity has fallen into civil war, but an even greater enemy is returning from the darkness. And only one man saw it coming. Will humanity listen? Or will they fall before the architects arrive? That is a story for another time. The warship of vengeance still flies. And when the architects come, they will learn what happens when you push humanity too far.